Hi everyone, this is Charlize from Forward Chess, and we're going to continue our endgame series and look at opposition from the opposing side. Now, this position will look familiar. We looked at it last time, and the idea is that white wants to promote the pawn. If white has the move here, then that is perfectly possible, granted white plays correctly. But in this position, things are a tad bit different. Well, really there's a huge difference, and that is that it's black to move. So let's flip the board. We are playing from black side, and our plan or our goal is going to be to stop the pawn from promoting and basically get a stalemate. And that is only possible because it is our move. So let's get started. First of all, the same way we broke it down in the previous video, rules to remember: your king is going to stay in front of your opponent's king and pawn, and you are going to take opposition when you can. Let's see this in action. We are going to start heading up. The white king is going to come out. Of course, white will try to keep the king in front of the pawn, but as you see, because it's our move, it's not going to matter. We will move up. And now this position is very critical. If it was white's move, white would win, but because it's black's move, black can draw. And the reason is that we can move into opposition. This, as we saw last time, covers all the squares in between the two kings. We are stopping the white king from coming forward and doing what it wants to do. So the white king has no choice but to move out of the way, and we're not going to outflank. Remember, that is what you want to do when you have the pawn. When you're playing against the opposition position, you just want to stay in front of your opponent's king and pawn and just keep taking opposition. Your opponent might, out of frustration, try to get the kings moving, but you are stopping anything from happening. The king is not going to come any closer. Of course, if your opponent's king moves out of the way, you can start heading to that pawn. But the king will either move in front of the pawn, or white will decide to start moving the pawn forward. Let's say the pawn goes one square forward. Now, as we said, simple rule to remember: you just stay in front of the pawn. You don't want to move back. Don't give your opponent space to move their pieces forward. You're controlling the squares in front of your opponent's king and pawn. Remember, it's all about controlling squares. So now your opponent has either the choice to move the king around. Sometimes players do this, just trying to achieve something. Stay in front of the pawn. And now, again, stay in front of the pawn. The reason is that when your opponent's king comes out, you can take opposition. And eventually, they're going to have to move the pawn forward. Let me repeat it: stay in front of the pawn. It's really simple. King will come out, and now stay in front of the pawn. I'm not going to the sides because I'm waiting for my opponent's king to come out so that I can take opposition. And we're just going to do this dance until we get to the end. Check, I'm staying in front of the pawn. The white king comes up, staying in front of the pawn, take opposition, and this is just a draw. As we can see now, critical position, as is every position, but we are staying in front of the pawn. We don't want to move to the side because now suddenly opposition. Now this is a bit of a pickle because we've reached the end. It doesn't matter that the opponent's pawn is in front of the king because they will promote next. So that's what happens when we allow white to take opposition. So we don't allow white to take. We will stay in front of the pawn and we will take opposition. This is the final position you will get, and that is a stalemate. Simple as that. You can test out this position in Chess Endings for Beginners book, available on Forward Chess. Until next time.